Meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda. Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Discussion item 25-26 budget.
So this evening, Delise and, Delise, I'm not gonna take credit for it. Delise has prepared a good presentation for you. However, I want to start this evening. I've received some questions and some emails and some different things, so I'd like to address some of those items. So one of the things that, has come up is on all of those tabs across the bottom of the presentation where Delise shows you, there's some questions of who falls under the administrators tab. So I want to clarify that for the person. First of all, administrators is anyone who is in, if you wanted to think about like this, like a management position. So this would be our directors. This would be our principals, assistant principals, myself, Deanna, right? Or CTE director, right? All of those people. And then one of the, do you want me to wait? Oh, okay, okay, okay. All right, I just saw a no signal sign. I didn't know if I needed to stop. I just wanted to clarify that. I learned something when I was talking to Delise this afternoon about that question. And if you want to explain where that administrator tab comes from?
Yes, so when we're budgeting in the system,
May I express how much I fucking hate Nick?
Your meeting has been You have been hacked by
Okay, that sounds good. I want to apologize to those on the board, in the audience. Anybody that was online that had to witness that, it's unfortunate of the childish nature of, some people, to interrupt, a meeting like this. So again, just want to apologize to everybody. It's unfortunate that that had to happen tonight, so.
So I'll start again, kind of. So I've been asked by, through a couple emails and some phone, personal conversations. And so where we left off was the administrative tab and who was on it, and Delise was starting to explain.
yes, so when we're budgeting within the system, especially when it comes to different bargaining groups, like we have our PSC union that has VIBA at a certain amount, and then our ESPP union that has their VIBA at a certain amount. In order to budget correctly and make sure everything's accurate, we have separate budget plans. Admin is all in one budget plan. Everybody basically gets the same benefits except for a few directors. And so when I created that presentation, I exported it from the system and got rid of names. So we weren't combining principals and directors and superintendents. It's just the way that the system budgets. And the way that it was exported from the system, and I didn't think it was necessary to separate all of them. There were no names or even positions attached to them. So that's where that came from.
So, some other things that were brought to our attention was, we're trying in a situation like this, unlike last year when we did these, last year we were looking to what were we going to spend, what were we not, and what were we going to spend it on? And in this situation, we don't have that many, we don't have that decision. So it's I don't want to say it's cut and dried, but it's just a very different type of budget. So an example was asked or was brought out to me and says, well, people are kind of, you're complaining about the cost of the VIBA. And, but Kim, you negotiated that and you did that and you signed those contract negotiations, and absolutely. When we're making negotiations, an example would be, one bargaining group has X number of dollars, it doesn't matter the amount. And then another bargaining group wants to be closer to the next one. And so when we're negotiating, it's exactly that. It's a negotiation. You give some and you get some. And so Viva in the Prosser School District has been around for a long time. So it's part of my job to negotiate Viva, or excuse me, negotiate the whole contract, and things come and go. So I just wanted to talk that through. The only other one that really came up that I can address right now before, and don't take too much time from Delise, is when we were talking about the absences. And well, there's a couple, but one good example is the absences. If a person's sick, they're sick. We weren't questioning that or making a statement that someone was not, was misusing an absence. What we were saying was our checks and balances, were not as tight as they needed to be. And I'm going to give you an analogy, and I think anybody listening or here at the table with me tonight, when I don't want to say there's enough money, but when that money is not the fixation of everything you do, you may buy 3 bags of potato chips every time you're at the grocery store. But when money becomes tight, you may say, okay, now I'm looking at what we're buying. We're only buying it. Have you ever heard this? Or your family said, we're only buying what's on the list today, right? So we're only able to buy what's on the list. And so now our checks and balances have to be tighter, and those are audit steps. We're not saying anyone mis-audited. We're not saying there was anything, but now we're paying attention to how many potato chips are being bought, and we have to do that. And then the last thing I want to do tonight is get the elephant out of the room. Since we met last time, we had the information that was released. We talked about it at the district opener today, and going back to checks and balances. This is on Kim Casey. I approve our school board agendas, but I'll be honest, I have not looked at every single link to approve it. Does that make sense? I make sure that it's in the realm of what the board should be looking at and so forth. And from now on, I will look at every single link. And so that's an example of how things get there. The only other thing I want to say is if something is bothersome when we use an analogy or when we're using examples, we work really hard to not be accusatory or not identify people. We're talking about systemic things. So I just wanted to start that tonight. So if anybody's listening or whatever, the other thing is, when we talk about a department, we're talking about the whole department. We're not talking about the directors to blame or the principals to blame or the superintendents to blame. We're talking about when we need to improve things, we need to improve them systemically. And so if like we got an amazing news, and I'll just make it public, we finally got our big safety net check, and we got a way to even apply for 11,000 more, something like, 16,000 more. So those are benefit of who's doing the work. So people get the kudos and we get the areas of problematic. So I just want to make that for the public record for tonight. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those questions. I tried to identify, I have a list here of some things I was trying to identify for those who may be listening tonight.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay, Blake, can you put that PDF on the screen, please?
And then would you just blow it up as big as you can? And then board members, do you all have it? So you can,
Yes.
just want to make sure you can get at it. That's so you don't have to try and read the screen across the way.
Probably not gonna happen.
Right.
Oh, no.
Perfect. Okay. So, if you scroll down a little bit, perfect. Yep, we can keep it right there. So, and then if you can scroll over to the left so we can see the right. You can keep going so we can see the words. Sorry. Yeah. I think
That's
that's
good.
fine. Yep, everybody has it up here. Perfect. Okay. So last week with the amount that we were spending, we are going to end it at a negative 630,000 fund balance. So these, I'm just gonna go through the cuts that we did. I don't have a copy of the F-195. I'll have it to you tonight. There was an issue with some account codes not coming over correctly, so I just got off a Zoom with the ESD right before this meeting, and we uploaded it to OSPI.
Yeah, I'm gonna push pause just for a split second. So when we do a budget and we make a plan, it goes to the ESD. They look at it, they converse through email, text, or phone calls with Delise. Then they say, yes. Then we upload it to OSPI. They goes through their check and balances before it can come back and be published.
Mhm.
So that's what she's saying when we had and if anybody's ever uploaded big files, they will upload and sometimes they go through well and sometimes they don't. So when they don't go through well, then we do a check and balance and then we have to go to OSPI and they only look at them 3 times a day or something like that. And then they come back to us. So just some context for
Yes,
people.
so OSPI pulls data a few times a day. And so like 3:30 is one, and then like 5:30 is another one in the evening. And so I uploaded it 45 minutes ago. So the cuts that we had, so the total cuts that the board asked were 2,075,000. I did reduce that a little bit, to 1.8, only to leave us some capacity for spending. My reasoning for that is anything could happen. Literally anything could happen that we would have to find money for. So I'm just building a little bit of capacity in our budget so we don't have to do a budget extension if needed. But the cuts, so we cut 750,000 from salaries. This included, the 200,000 from the 500,000 for cert subs, 200,000 of the 500,000 for classified subs. We cut 250,000 from the 400,000 of overtime. And then we cut 100,000 of the 260,000, of extra cert time above and beyond contract and supplemental contracts.
Why don't you explain why you changed kind of from what we talked about at the last study session of the overtime? You left a little more capacity.
Yep, so that's what I was talking about. I left a little capacity in overtime. When I tell you we're getting a lot of pushback from the unions about overtime, we are. And so I don't want to run into a situation where we are made to pay something that we're not budgeting for. And so I thought the fiscally responsible thing to do was to leave an extra bucket in there because we don't know how this is going to play out. We have a union meeting on Monday with one of them to talk about it. But yeah, the CBAs are hard to get around. And so the next, sorry, go ahead.
Can you just explain to me, like, I guess I'm not understanding what the pushback would be. There's probably a certain amount, maybe guaranteed by
For
contract.
one union there is, the pushback that we're receiving from unions is that it should be in good faith that we give them overtime and not have them flex their time.
But
Yes.
it's not in the contract that way.
It
Is
is
that
not
correct?
in the contract that way, yes. And so this is, a part of keeping good relationships with our unions also. Kim has worked very hard to create these relationships with the reps. And so we just need to keep the conversation open and hear them out and what they have to say about it. I just don't want to be put back into a corner for something that we can't get out of. So I did leave $100,000 in there for the classified.
Can I ask a question? So you added 100,000 in the.
I didn't add,
Or you just.
I just didn't,
take it,
yeah.
Take it out. So I guess for me, I don't have a problem doing budget amendments. What that allows us, well, in my perspective, allows the board to have control over spending. But if it's needed, we can always make a budget amendment. I know it's not the ideal way to do it. But if we are in, and this is just my opinion, but you know, if we're in this situation and next year is gonna be even funner. You know, I guess, I mean, I get what you're saying. It does make sense, but if we're gonna be true to a budget and try to not only worry about this year's budget, but next year's budget, I would rather do a budget amendment if it's needed personally, but that's just my opinion.
I'm
And
gonna
that's
ask a
fine.
question that I would think I would know the answer to, but I don't. What and how, not so much for our operation, what is involved in asking for the budget extension as far as the relation with the ESD and the OSBI?
Oh, it's
just-
fine. It's kind of like what we're doing for ASB, right? So we have to pay for the advertising costs. You have to publish it for 2 weeks before the extension. And then that's basically it, right? So we have to redo our budget with OSPI. OSPI has to approve it. But we would rather do an extension than get a hand slap letter saying that we overspent budget. And that was a completely different situation. That was a system thing. However, those add up, right? And we don't want to have that kind of reputation.
But I think, and make sure I get my notes right. I think isn't the ASB budget extension due to some money getting added into that budget
Yes, and them having more capacity
to
to spend.
spend it?
Yep.
So to me, this seems different. I mean, and please chime in, but, you know, if we keep the budget as is based on last, you know, what we talked about last meeting, you know, we're gonna know where we're gonna sit by February of next year.
Absolutely.
So you're not gonna have to actually do a budget extension. It would be a budget amendment to extend, you know, the capacity to spend, right?
We would still have to do an extension to extend the capacity.
But
So,
we could do that within the year, not at the end of the year to push
Yes.
it.
yep, yeah,
Right.
exactly. So obviously, the sooner the better. We
Right.
want to do an extension, and a lot of districts will do it just in case. If they think, or if they're forecasted, or if they're a little bit nervous about it, just to give themselves extra cushion. And so, yeah, I'm totally fine with that. If that's what you guys want me to do, I will change it and we can do that instead. I don't have a problem
I'm
with it.
just one person, one opinion. I mean, it's gonna take all of us to. That's a consensus. And what was the dollar amount again? I'm sorry.
100,000.
100,000.
Yeah, I don't know, if we're getting ahead of ourselves here or not, please, if I am, just let me know, but currently estimated ending fund balance is at a 3.1%. So I think if I recall, policies 4.
4 to 5.
So I mean, even again, the conversations that we're passing a budget that goes against policy. So I think that goes back to Jason's comment about something's got to get whacked.
Mhm. Right, and I think an important thing on this too that I wanted to bring up is this is a tight budget and we need to be even tighter.
Mhm.
Like we cannot, we really have to hold the hammer down this year. Because we are still putting extra cushion in both salaries and MSOCs for a just in case. But we have to tighten it up. But I am open and willing to do whatever the board wants.
Okay, keep going while they process some of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we just need to draw a hard line now, and then we can always
Okay.
ease off through the year.
I will do that.
At least one more question before you keep going. but,
Yes.
Trying to pull up our presentation from last time, but did the beginning fund balance amount change from our last presentation, or did that? also-
Nope, that is the same. I have that open right here. It was a 675. What we're hoping it to be better, right? I think for me, knowing the numbers, I predict we'll be at a few $100,000 above that. However, I'm very conservative in my budget and I don't want to, make a promise that we can't keep. So I did budget a conservative number for that. Okay, MSOCs. So I wanted to, so I've been working with Drew at 123, and when we spoke last week, our budgeted MSOCs, we did not spend the capacity this year. We could not spend the capacity because we were spent $1.5 million over in salaries, right? And so that got reduced from MSOCs. And so we're predicted to spend $718,000 less in MSOCs than we budgeted for because of the increase in salaries. And so the ESD advised to take that out. And so we were able to cut some in MSOCs. And so I cut the 718,000 that we're not spending. And then we're cutting even more. So we went through and did the curriculum adoption. I edited that to be Deanna's requested 40,000, I think it was, above and beyond the grant. We took out a bunch of $470,000 of supplies. And these were just buckets of supplies in different codes that did not get used. And then building budgets. And so we did at the advice of the board, reduce all the building budgets to 30K. So we were at 335 that was allocated. And so now we have allocated 30K to every building. And so we cut that out of the budget also. So our MSOCs were cut a little over $1 million. But again, we have to be tighter. Like we really, really, really have to be tighter. Talking about paper, monitoring paper, creating an account code just specifically for paper to see who's using how much paper and why, and where we can cut that back. You know, things like that, really monitoring POs, what's being purchased. You know, a lot of our buildings now, they have all of their POs entered for this coming year. We had them do it in the spring. And then we had some discussion about waiting because of cash flow. And so we did, but those have all been approved and are being paid. And so the budgeted amount for this year, you know, I know some schools have gotten their paper and the classroom orders. We ordered desks and furniture for some rooms that did not come out of building budgets. That was a district cost. And so we really, you know, no travel. Nobody should be traveling, even if you're in a grant, right? And it's not about the cash flow. It's truly about the expenditures. And we learned
Just put one staple in that seat.
You don't have to learn something from, yeah. Deanna, did you want to say something?
Hi, Mrs. Munoz is down the hall helping families, but this is art and music.
Oh, yeah. Oh, just mute her. She's talking to people.
Art and music. It's not done. It'll be more decorated by the time you guys come.
Oh, goodness.
What a meeting.
I forgot where I was at, but we need to monitor the POs more, monitor the spending more. No, you know, no traveling, no, overnight trips, no, you know, no conferences overnight, no, you know, none of that.
And for the record, I'm gonna say this conversation, in case somebody listens to it later, we're not referring to ASB or student things. So like if you're listening and you only hear that clip of it, we're not talking, you know, FFA is still gonna do its stuff and you know what I mean? Like the ASBs and okay. So I just
Yes,
wanna make
and
sure
the
I'm putting,
PTEs,
I'm
yes.
just putting that out there for the record.
Yes, yeah, ASB is fine. They can spend all of the money they want. They have plenty. We encourage that. And so we're able to adjust the revenue a little bit also. So we had a little uptick in revenue. We were a little bit worried about our kinders because we had only had 140 registered. And so we adjusted our FTE. And we do have 149. So that's an extra $90,000. And then Deanna realized that there was some federal reports, grant reports that came out that OSPI published, and our Title I money was about $100,000 more than what we thought it was going to be. So we were able to add a little bit in the revenue.
We also just got, remember the contract for, don't remember the name of the company, the PLC leader, Chris Clem. Don't remember, do you remember the name of her company that you did last week or last budget meeting? we just literally about 4:15 today got, that the OSSI, the School Improvement Grant, reopened. So we may be able to apply for that contract. So it really is a moving ship. As fast as we can go, it's changing, but that would fall under that.
Yes.
I have some other good news in amongst that news. Well, it doesn't really change the bottom line, but we have we worked with Clear Risk, which is the insurance provider for our liability insurance.
Oh.
Which is actually, the company is USIP. Universal School
Insurance
Insurance
provider.
provider. Anyhow, we had a meeting with them, and I'm happy to say that they have allowed us, or they've given us an option to do technically, I believe, 7 payments and a balloon payment in April when we get our levy dollars. This is, like I said, doesn't change what you're looking at, but this, and no interest. And so this allows the freak out that we always have in September and October to pay the $800,000 insurance premium in one lump or two, like last year. They are listening to their members, right, or they're insured. And so we had a great meeting with them, and we got an email today that is an option, and I think we're gonna take it.
Yes, and April for the balloon payment is because we get our big tax payment. So we'll have extra cash that month to pay the.
Do you remember
rest of
what
it.
the monthly payment is? Like 70?
60.
60.
Yep, 60,000 a month, and then April is 300.
So that's a good deal.
And that's no interest, right?
No interest. Yeah, they were very, very gracious.
So what I've heard so far, we're gonna tighten the one that we padded back. We're gonna tighten that back up to 100,000. Right? In the overtime, is that what I'm hearing? I'm seeing 5 nods of the head. Okay.
It's on my notes.
Other questions? Concerns, comments? I have a couple in the audience. Anything you've heard, Mr. Bailey, that? Okay. Anyone online? We really do like to hear from people, right? If there's any. Yeah, no pictures.
I just was curious if our budget is projected to not maintain the fund balance that our policy dictates, what is the procedure we need to follow then?
We're in a financial emergency. We have to declare a financial emergency until we are until our fund balance exceeds that.
So I have been well, let me restate that. There is an email out to research the order of operations that happens. So at our next week meeting, we have a public hearing. And then I have to have guidance on if we do the financial emergency in the agenda order prior to the approval of the budget or after the approval of the budget. I believe it has to happen before, or I don't think you technically could approve. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
I think
So-
that's what we did last year.
Yeah.
right?
Did we do it in the same meeting?
I'd have to go back and forth.
I could look, but I just want everybody who's listening to understand that there is an order in which we have to do things so that we're following proper governance rules.
Is there any miracle that might happen within the course of the year where we would then be able to be within the threshold we need to not be in financial emergency? Or should we just expect that this is going to be a full year?
If we do it right, what we see is pretty much probably what you're gonna get. And if we did the same thing the next year, then we would be out.
2 years of this belt tightening, if you will,
Is that a
would fix us out of financial emergency at least.
Yes, yep, to fix us, to be able to get our fund balance to be at the 4 to 5% consistently. And I think that's the issue, right, is when when our fund balance is as low as it is, and it has increasingly gotten lower over the last 5 years, and your expenses stay the same, it's really hard to get that fund balance back up. And everybody saw it with the COVID money. A lot of districts didn't save that money or invested that money. They spent that money on staff, on buildings. And so their fund balance, they don't have a cushion, like what we're experiencing right now. And so we need to focus on getting that fund balance back up. And, so we can undo the belt a little bit and get back to normal operations.
I think it's encouraging to hear that you only foresee this being 2 years before we're back, because I think there is a lot of, I think there's a lot of people who are worried about what the next school year might look like and our revenue streams there too.
So that still is up in the air for many. I think that I don't want to say the difference, but a little bit of the difference is we're prepared now that many may go. And we should know about that when the federal government legislative session is over, not 2 months or the month that we're doing the budget, like what we had predicted. One more thing for the public record. When I had sent the letter to the community and to you that we were potentially not getting our grant or our title dollars and so forth, a couple of people asked me, why haven't I sent that letter back out? Like, this has come back and we were able to do that. I didn't, like you're just talking about tonight, I did not feel comfortable doing that until this budget is approved. Does that make sense? So the employees are back and some of the programs are back, right? But I'm just not comfortable until we have everything in line, and then it'll be, here's what we were able to bring back for 25, 26, but we're still uncertain for 26, 27. And we will keep you abreast as it happens.
The question, kind of goes back to your PO, company, but the monitoring POs and stuff like that. When we look at the vouchers every month or every other week, in the detail page, is that where the PO information is going to be found? Is that what gets inputted into our system?
Like when somebody else submits a PO?
Well, yeah,
No, so it depends. It depends on who's submitting the PO and like what vendor they're using. So if you're using Amazon, you have a cart and it's an e-commerce vendor. And so all of the items are listed and then our accounts payable has to go in and approve it. The e-commerce are one thing, but when you have like an Office Depot order, the person entering it has the option of doing it by line item, right? So you can upload a copy of your order. Or if you can't do that, you can do, but I would prefer line item, but that's just my preference. And you would go in and say, okay, I'm buying 20 cases of paper at this amount and the invoice will be this amount. So we know what's being purchased. That doesn't always happen. So it'll
If they
say,
attach the cart.
yes, or it'll say supplies, or it really just depends on who's entering the PO. Or it'll say classroom order, or it'll say, and if it's not descriptive and if there's no line items, we had a one recently where the PO was entered, and when you're looking at the PO, it looked like because of the description, it looked like a cost for one item. And it wasn't just one item, it was a cost for like 40 of them. But the way that the PO was entered, it was entered as a one line item. And so I was like, we're not spending that money on one thing. And so then the conversation started of, okay, well, why are you spending this money on this one thing? Well, actually it's 40. And so that was a learning opportunity. Okay, well, next time, if you don't want it to be delayed, have your secretary put it in this way. So that's just one example of many on the POs.
Another, another example is, let's use, food service. So if we're ordering from US Foods, and let's pretend there's 150 items. It shows US Foods order, and this is not exactly what it says, US Foods order October 5, right? And then there's an attachment to that, right? So what we're talking about, Delise and I and our teams looking in and going, kind of like what I talked about the board packet, right? And looking at every single cart completely and looking at the orders on the back side. Because the purchase order, you can say, see attached.
And it's also, training our new staff too, to look at every single PO and to question it and to look at the code before it gets to me, because it gets submitted by the person submitting it, the administrator, and then my accounts payable department, and then it comes to me for approval. So it goes through a few different approvals before it comes to me. As you guys know, I have a very green staff. And so teaching them what to look for, they are learning. There's been some really great opportunities for our new accounts payable. And we're very blessed to have her. She comes from a building, and so she has that knowledge also. The knowledge of this is what it looks like when they're entering the PO. And so just tightening up those processes and educating my staff on, okay, you should question this PO. Or if there's not an attachment, don't approve the PO. And so it's a lot of that. And with the POs, we had a spending freeze, right? And this is a learning thing for me also, is just because people are submitting it doesn't necessarily mean that it's necessary, right? Like we have to make the decision and really go through, because if I'm a staff member and I need something, I'm gonna think that it's necessary. Do you know what I mean? But it may not be necessary in the bigger picture. There could be things we talked about, postcards, right? Or, I said, okay, well, instead of ordering postcards, why don't we just create them our own? And it's gonna take extra time and cut them, on the paper cutter and copy last year's, but then we're saving a few $100s on getting them printed somewhere else. And so we're just gonna have to be creative.
Yeah, an example would, remember we talked about the student handbook, right? Are we gonna print or are we gonna do it online? Then I do the research, the surrounding districts are all online, right? And so we printed and then we saw what's happening, and now we're gonna print them ourselves and print 1 or 2 for each building, right? So I think that's what Delisa's saying, and everyone's working really hard. And everybody is willing to be a partner and to make it better. But it feels, to some, it feels, I don't know if the word's accusatory, but it feels, like we're picking or something. But it's the same across all types of people, and meaning like all types of employees and all positions. Is what I should have said, not types, positions of people and all different things. And, we just have to do it if we want to do the right thing.
It's gonna be difficult for everybody, right? That hasn't been a secret. We've said that, I don't know how many times. It's going to be an adjustment. There has been a culture that has been created that people have to step out of. Nobody likes change. I don't like change. But in order to get us back to a place where we can, spend freely, we have to be fiscally responsible to get to that point. Because spending freely in the last 6 or 7 years hasn't really helped us.
And I think that's the other thing, even when things are better, we may be able to broaden the spectrum of what's necessary, but the freely concept is maybe what got us here to begin with.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Last year, we, kind of talked about the right sizing of the district, to kind of help get things back in order. I guess as we sit today going into this school year, are we right sized, or is that still
Closer.
something
We're
that's
closer.
a process?
It's a process. I'll give you an example, and I'd like you to put your parent hat on, right? At what point, and it doesn't matter the grade, but it kind of does. At what point is right sizing. Because remember, the state allocation for a classroom is 28.83 at the high school. Right? 28.83, the average. I think that's what it is. At what point is 28.83 students in a classroom, right? Too many. And when is it not enough? So I guarantee you, if there's a teacher listening and you're teaching Algebra 1 to every student who wants to learn algebra or not, 28 students as a past high school teacher is too many kids in an Algebra 1 classroom if you're going to give them the individualized instruction they have to make sure they truly know. So right sizing sometimes comes at a cost. We are really proud in Prosser that our youngest students have 18 students in a classroom. Right? And we're able to fall within that 18. If Jesse or Jody listening, I think we're there, Julene, right? I think we're there at K1 too, right? And then we jump up. And then we also have contract language, what Delise was talking about. When we hit to a certain number, now we pay overload pay. Right? So how much overload pay versus hiring another teacher? So I think to answer your question as straightforward as I can, we're close. And I had a nice conversation with the high school counselor a couple days ago. I think all the days are kind of running together, but the number of students that we're seeing in Running Start, the number of students that we're seeing in our online programs, all of those things have to be taken into consideration as well when you're right sizing, right? So is it tough because it's an ever moving number? Yeah, but we are certainly a lot closer. And we mentioned it once, we don't know what's going to happen in 26, 27 with those grant dollars being lost, potentially, everybody potentially being lost. What does that do to our right sizing? Right? So I think the other thing I'd like everybody who's listening tonight to understand is when, depending on your age, when it's COLA, that used to be the cost of living, that's what most people refer to it, or IPD, the inflationary price determiner, or whatever it's called. When the state gives us that, it's only for the amount of staff that meet in the model, right? And so that's one piece. But both Delise, Deanna, anybody, we're not saying that we can run under that. And that's why we have levies, right? So anybody's listening, in 2027, we're going to have to run a levy again, right? We want people to understand we're doing the right thing, even when it's hard. And right sizing is important, but we also have to weigh out the cost and the benefit, right? Had a really interesting conversation with an elective teacher. We know that we're focusing on improving the core educational products of our students, right? English, and I use ELA, English Language Arts, and math, but it doesn't come at the cost of history and science. But does it come at the cost of the arts and PE, right? And everybody, I'm not saying it comes at that cost, but there are only 7 or 6 hours in a student day, right? And the laws are very clear about recess, and laws are very clear about lunch, and that lunch one just changed again. So I guess what I'm saying is, to answer your question again, Brian, there's a balance of right sizing and cost and what we give up, right? And we certainly do not want to tell family of a 3rd grader, there's only X number of minutes of recess and X number of minutes of art or PE or something, because math is more important than the well-rounded child. Some can argue it is, and some can argue it's not. But I'm just saying there's pluses and minuses to the right sizing. We're getting closer.
I'm not sitting here saying we need to get rid of more people because it,
Yeah.
it's this two-sided thing. I mean, enrollment's down. So then I guess my mindset goes to, okay, if ultimately we're more in line with the 1A school, you go to a 1A school, there's still students are able to do what students should be able to do. And I still want that for Prosser. So I wasn't asking that.
I didn't
to-
hear that way.
And
didn't hear that.
I know what the state allocations, the way they allocate money and what they say a district should be run like, we are a different animal. So I know that's tough. I just, hopefully, we can still provide what students ultimately need to be well-rounded.
No, she just said she got kicked out and couldn't get back in. I
Oh.
just wanted to see.
Third questions.
Are we recording the whole thing though? Okay.
We need to pause or we just keep rolling? Okay. If there's no other questions or additional comments, hearing none. That concludes this portion of the meeting. Future meetings, we do have a meeting next week, regular board meeting, August 27th, right here at 6 PM. That will be a budget hearing. And then the following day on August 28th, there'll be a special board meeting at 4 PM on a budget extension for the ASB fund for 24-25 school year. No further comments. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.